Hey there. Good morning, everybody. If it's morning where you are, maybe good afternoon, maybe good evening. How are you today? I hope you're doing well. We're into September. I know it's one of those ridiculous things to talk about, but can we believe it? Made it through Labor Day weekend. We're back to school. Things are going to start feeling like fall very soon. I'm so excited. I'm also excited because I've got so much fun stuff coming for you. This is going to be a great winter. I am launching the Fierce Calm project this winter. That's going to be coming. So stay tuned for that. I'm going to be doing another webinar in September. My Freedom from Anxiety webinar, I'm going to be doing September 18th at 11:30 a.m. Central Standard Time. There is a link on the website, kellyhanlonmccormick.com. Across the top, there's this little announcement bar. You can click there and get registered for the Freedom from Anxiety webinar. There will be a replay because I understand how life goes, but it will only be available to those of you who register. So even if you can't come September 18th at 11:30, go ahead and get registered so that you get the replay. Sound good? Okay, so let's get into it. This is episode 31 of the Transforming Anxiety podcast. And today we are talking about what is normal anyway. This is honestly one of the most common questions that I get from new clients, from DMs on Instagram, from emails from readers or listeners or people who are trying to decide if they want to go all in with coaching. People want to know if what they're experiencing and what they're feeling is normal, right? And what they're saying is, first of all, we have this programming. We've talked a lot about the pre-programming that our brains come with, right? Things like seeking pleasure, avoiding pain, being efficient, things like the stress response and anxiety in general. That is pre-programming that we come with. We also come with programming that it's like very tempting for us to want to fit in, right? If you think again back to cave people times, it was important to be a part of the group. It was important to stay in the community. There was strength in numbers. So anytime that we feel as if we're under threat of getting kicked out of the group, right? Anytime that we feel like we could be ostracized or we could be left behind or we could be abandoned, that gets us all kind of rankled up. That's like, oh, no, no, no. I want to be part of the group, right? This is other programming that we come with. And I know some of us are sitting here right now, and I'm one of those people who's like, I don't know. I kind of like being on my own. But truly, like deep down, if you think about like total isolation, totally being left out of the group, left out of the community, left behind on your own, this is not something that's normal for humans, right? It's programming that we come with, that it's like what's normal is for us to want to be with the group. So when people ask me, is this normal? Is how I'm feeling normal? Is who I am normal? What they're that like there's that motivation, that underlying instinctual programming that's saying, am I still going to be part of the group? Can I stay in the community? Are you going to boot me out? Right? That's the underlying question that we're asking when we're asking each other, when we're looking around and we're like, I'm freaking out about this. I don't know how to handle this. I'm feeling overwhelmed. I'm feeling confused. I'm feeling stressed. We're looking around for some social proof that we're still normal. And that even in the midst of all of that freaking out, even with all of that going on, that we're still going to be accepted and that we still belong to the tribe, to the community, to the group, right? So just check in with yourself. If you feel that question bubbling up for you, am I normal? Is this normal? Is what I'm experiencing normal? Just check in with yourself and see if you can find a place where you maybe feel, however subconscious, that little twinge of a threat that maybe you're going to get booted out and abandoned if you're not normal. And that may be your compulsion for checking in and saying, is this normal? right? And wanting that social proof, that validation from somebody else. So I wanted to talk about that first, just because I wanted to normalize the question, is this normal? Right? That is a question that is pre-programmed for us to wonder about, for us to ask, for us to look around to other people and say, okay, but am I okay here? Right? Okay. Now, what I wanted to talk about is the idea of normal. And in the podcast, I give a handful of things that are statistically normal. I'm going to go through just a couple of them here with you. And then we're going to go through a handful of things that are a little bit funnier and a little bit sillier, but equally as normal. And what I want you to do throughout this practice is kind of, when you look at a word over and over and over again, and the word kind of starts looking weird and kind of like, you don't know, it just looks like scribbles. It doesn't look like the word anymore. That's what we want our brains to do with the concept of normal. That's why I'm giving you all of this stuff that is normal, right? I just want you to stare at it and let your mind go a little fuzzy with the concept of normal so that we can start redefining it. Okay. So a few things that are statistically normal, and I go through more of these in the podcast. I'm just going to do a couple of them here on video with you. One of them is anxiety, right? Anxiety is pretty darn normal. There are 40 million Americans, which is about 20% of the adult population, that experience some sort of anxiety. So anxiety in and of itself is pretty normal. Another thing that's really normal is sleep deprivation, right? There are plenty of Americans, and I focused most of my statistics and research on studies that I could find based on the adult American population, not because I don't love you all and the rest of the world, just because that was what was handy for me to grab. But there are many, many, many adults who are chronically sleep deprived, right? Who on the regular do not get enough sleep every night, right? So those are two things that are statistically normal. Another one that I found actually stats on that I thought was really interesting is road rage. How statistically, it was like 80% of Americans have expressed some form of aggression or rage or anger behind the wheel, right? So road rage is statistically very normal. So I just wanted to show you, like, these are a few things that are, hey, like, there's numbers behind it. These are things that are normal. These are things that are pretty commonplace. So then there were a few things that I found that I was just kind of looking around and kind of thinking of my personal experience and what I see people do and asking some friends and family, which made for some fun conversations over dinner in the last few weeks. What are things that you do normally that are kind of weird, right? Like, we all kind of fessed up to standing in the grocery store and wanting to look at a product over here that somebody else was standing in front of. So just pretending to be really interested in something over here while we wait for this person to move on, right? We don't just wait for them. We don't say, excuse me. Most of us just pretend to be really absorbed in something that we're never going to buy. And wait for that person to move on so that we can get the product that we need off the shelf, right? That's pretty normal. Something else that's super normal, yelling at the TV. Whether it's because the TV isn't working or because you're watching a game on the TV and it's not going the way that you want it to, but there's so many reasons that we yell at inanimate objects. It's pretty normal, right? Feeling bored and opening the fridge. Super normal, right? Most of us had experienced that and had done that within the past week, right? I'm feeling a little bored. I'm gonna open the fridge. Like there's some entertainment in there, right? But which, of course, that's a whole other episode. That's a whole other conversation. We use food as entertainment, of course, to distract ourselves from being bored. But these were just a few examples of things that, like, some of them were more serious and some of them had stats to back up, and some of them were a little sillier, but these are all things that are normal, right? So again, I want your mind to just go to work looking at these things and kind of like so that it glazes over and kind of all that normalcy gets fuzzy. Like, what does normal even mean? If it's normal to stand in the grocery store and look at something that I don't want to buy because I'm waiting for somebody to move so that I could get what I want, like, what am I making normal mean? Right? Now, think about examples like that, things that you do that are totally normal, right? And then remind yourself of that pre-programming that we come with, that we want to be part of the group, we want to be part of the community, and so we desperately want to be normal and accepted, and we want to belong, right? That's where our compulsion and that temptation for normalcy comes from. So this week, the work that we're doing this week and the worksheet that I have for you this week is all about redefining your normal and getting really clear on what's normal for you. What do you want to be normal for you? And then I talk a little bit about comparison in the podcast. Another reason that we and this comes up in the worksheet too, is why I'm bringing this up here. Another thing that we do when we're trying to check in and see, like, am I normal, is we look out there and we compare ourselves with everybody else. Well, if what I'm doing is normal, then other people will probably be doing it, right? And so we are tempted to compare our experience with what we're seeing somebody else go through or what we're perceiving their life to be like. And here's the deal with comparison. There are many deals with comparison. Here's a deal with comparison, right? We can only ever compare apples to apples, right? And anytime that you are comparing yourself to somebody else, you're automatically comparing apples to oranges. It doesn't make any sense. There's no upside for that. It's not useful, okay? So I use the example that, like, my husband is a fantastic runner. He's been running for decades at this point. He loves running. He's a really good, aka fast, runner, right? So if I were to start running in some hypothetical world, I used to run, I do not run anymore, but let's say I take running up again and I'm running a, probably be like a 10, 11, 12-minute mile, right? It would not be good. Compared to him, that would not be normal, right? His normal is somewhere between like a 7, 8, maybe a 9-minute mile if he's, kind of slow or not feeling it that day. He can run a 6-minute mile, right? So if I go out there and I run literally twice or half as fast, right? Twice as slow, however you want to say that. If I'm running a 12-minute mile and he's running a 6-minute mile, then we're looking at each other and we're like, who's to say what's normal here? His norm is totally different than my norm, right? Now, what would be more useful, instead of me comparing myself to his normal, what would be more useful is for me to start running and to commit to running and to consistently run and practice and to track my distances and to track my times and the pacing that I'm doing and all of that good stuff. And then after 3 months and after 6 months and after 12 months to look back and say, okay, here's where I started and here's where I'm at now. Now I'm comparing apples to apples, right? I had a norm, my normal when I started, and then I would have a new normal, right? I'd be faster, I'd be able to run further, all of that stuff would be happening. Then I could compare and say, like, okay, now I've just raised the bar on myself. I've got a new normal that's more impressive, that's stronger, that's faster, that's better than my old normal. That's worth comparing. That there's some value in that. That's useful, right? But comparing my running normal to my husband's running normal is not useful for either one of us. It gives neither one of us any information that's helpful at all. So to take this to anxiety, we tend to do this with our experience with anxiety, right? We tend to do this with, like, how quick am I to stress out? How quick am I to get overwhelmed? How quick am I to get confused or anxious over something, right? How intense is it for me? How long does it last? Like, how do I handle things when I'm feeling anxious? We tend to do all of that. And I'm here to promise you that the only comparison that is ever useful for you in this scenario is to compare your normal with your normal. how you grow, how you develop, how you progress, that will be worth comparing to a past version of yourself, to a present version of yourself. That could be worth comparing to a future version of yourself that you are on the path and you are committed to creating, right? Then you'll know how far you need to go. Then you'll know what you need to change. Then you'll know what you need to do to get there, right? That's a useful comparison. But when we compare our normal to somebody else, we're left with like, I don't know what's normal here. So I want to encourage each of you to define your own normal. This can be with anxiety, this can be with weight, this can be with finances, this can be with relationships, this can be with anything, right? Define your normal. Get clear on where you're at right now. Get clear on where you want to be. What do you want your normal to look like? Like I listed in the podcast, there were a few things that I'm like, this is just my normal now. Have I worked to create this? Of course. But a few things that are just part of my everyday life. I get up really early. I get up around 5 o'clock, go for a long 2, 3, 4 mile walk with the puppy, right? I get home, I pack up the boys' lunches, and then I do an hour or more of yoga, right? I drink tea all day, every day, like it is my job. These are things that are normal for me. I used to drink Chardonnay like it was my job, right? I used to practice recovering from hangovers like it was my job. That used to be normal for me, right? It didn't used to be normal for me to get up and do back-to-back workouts first thing in the morning. That wasn't my norm. It's my norm now, right? It was a norm that I created for myself. So redefining normal, which means checking in with where you are now. What is your norm right now? What do you want your normal to be? Right? Using that as the barometer, using that as the measuring stick for where you want to go and how you want to create this. And just knowing your mind is going to want to compare. Your mind is going to look out there for what's normal. That's just part of the programming. It's okay, right? But you can keep reminding yourself the answer isn't out there. The answer is always in here. I need to check in with what my normal is, with what I want my normal to be, right? That's where the value is. That's what's most useful. Comparing to a normal out there isn't going to get you anywhere, right? If I compared my running to my husband's running, I would never run again. I'd be like, well, this is not normal. That guy can run twice as fast as I can. There's something wrong with me. And I would quit. And what good is that? Right? I'm never going to get faster. I'm never going to get stronger. I'm never going to be able to run further if I use his norm to compare my norm to right out of the gate. It's never going to work, right? So I hope this is useful in the idea of the concept of normal and redefining normal and coming back home inside, finding your normal, redefining what you want your normal to be. And then remember, use apples to apples every time. Compare your norm to your norm. Don't compare your norm to somebody out there, right? And remember, like when we're looking at that overarching idea of what normal is, there are many things that I list in the podcast that are normal. And it's like, do you want to be this person? Right? Like, just quickly, one thing that I said in the podcast that is super normal, like driving through a fast food restaurant multiple times a week, pretty normal occurrence in America, right? I don't want anything to do with that. I don't want any part of that. So I want that to be okay. I'm not judging, right? People can do that. That can be normal for other people. I don't want it to be normal for me. I don't want that to be normal for my family, right? That's just one example. There are so many examples out there of things that you can find that are normal that you don't want to be normal for you. Okay? All right. I will leave you with that. Check in on the podcast. You can grab your downloadable worksheet, kellyhanlonmccormick.com/podcast/31. And one last reminder, the Freedom from Anxiety webinar will be coming up Wednesday, September 18th. It's at 11:30 a.m. Central Time. So get registered for that. There will be a replay, but only if you're registered. All right? Okay, I hope you have an amazing week. I'm going to see you same time, same place next week. Next week, we're talking about minimalism. It's going to be so fun. This is something I've been thinking about and researching for weeks and months. So I'm super excited about that episode and sharing how minimalism and decluttering and all of that stuff can affect us emotionally. So fun. All right, so I'll be back with that next week. Have an awesome week, and I will see you then. Take care, guys. Bye for now.